What if just $50 could grow enough food to feed your family all year? The Amish have been doing it for generations with no chemicals, no costly tools, just smart planning and nature's rhythm. In a world of rising prices and shrinking quality, their method isn't just clever, but it outpaces the modern standard of living. It's a game changer for anyone who wants real food, real savings, and real security. Walk into any grocery store today and watch people's faces at the checkout. That look of sticker shock isn't new, but it's getting worse every year. The average American family now drops $7,729 annually just to keep food on the table. That's more than most people spend on their car payment. Meanwhile, tucked away in rural communities across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, Amish families are feeding 8 or more people for less than $200 a year. They're not eating scraps or going hungry either. These folks enjoy fresh vegetables, hearty meals, and enough preserved food to last through the harshest winters. The math seems impossible until you realize what's really happening. While we're buying prepackaged salads for $5 that go bad in 3 days, Amish families are harvesting fresh lettuce from plots smaller than a tennis court. Their gardens produce enough food to feed a small army, and they do it without fancy equipment or expensive fertilizers. The only thing growing faster than vegetables in an Amish garden is the money staying in their pockets. Your great-grandmother probably knew these same tricks. She lived through times when growing your own food wasn't a hobby, it was survival. Families back then understood that a patch of dirt and some seeds could mean the difference between eating well and going without. They knew which vegetables would store through winter, how to make plants grow in poor soil, and which crops gave the biggest bang for their buck. Back then, every family had someone who could look at a plot of land and know exactly what would grow best where. They understood that certain vegetables needed morning sun while others thrived in afternoon shade. They knew when to plant based on soil temperature, not just calendar dates. Most importantly, they planned their gardens like they planned their pantries, making sure they had food for every season. Somewhere along the way, we traded that knowledge for convenience. We started believing that buying food was easier than growing it. The truth is, it might be easier in the short run, but it's certainly not cheaper. When you can grow 80% of your family's food for the cost of one grocery shopping trip, you start to wonder who's really getting the better deal. The Amish didn't forget what our grandparents knew. They kept using methods that actually work, methods that can turn $50 and a small patch of ground into a year's worth of fresh, healthy food. They never got caught up in the latest gardening trends or expensive gadgets that promise miracle results. Instead, they stuck with techniques that have been feeding families reliably for generations. But there's something they do differently right from the start that sets them apart from everyone else. Most people decide what to plant around the same time they're buying their first bag of mulch at the garden center. That's already too late. By then, the Amish have been sketching garden layouts, ordering seeds, and mapping out their growing season for months. January might seem like an odd time to think about tomatoes, but that's exactly when successful gardeners get serious. While the rest of us are still recovering from holiday leftovers, Amish families are huddled around kitchen tables with seed catalogs and last year's garden notes. They're not just picking what sounds good. They're calculating how many jars of green beans they'll need to last until next summer, figuring out which corner of the garden gets the most morning sun, and deciding whether to expand the potato patch or try something new. These winter planning sessions aren't rushed affairs. Families spend hours reviewing what worked well the previous year and what didn't. They note which varieties produced the most food, which ones stored best, and which crops their family actually enjoyed eating. There's no point growing perfect zucchini if nobody wants to eat it. They also consider practical matters like how much time each crop requires for maintenance and harvest. The difference in planning shows up in the numbers. The typical American gardener grows 6 to 8 different vegetables. Most plant whatever catches their eye at the nursery or whatever their neighbor recommended. Amish families average 47 different varieties in their gardens. That's not showing off, that's strategy. They plan their gardens like most people plan their retirement. The only difference is their vegetables actually grow. Each crop serves a purpose. Some provide fresh eating through the summer. Others are meant for canning and preserving. A few are specifically chosen because they store well in root cellars through winter. Nothing gets planted by accident and nothing gets wasted. They consider how much space each plant needs when it will be ready to harvest and what will follow it in the same spot later in the season. The Amish also plan for succession. They know that planting all their lettuce at once means dealing with 50 heads ripening simultaneously, followed by months without fresh greens. Instead, they stagger plantings every 2 weeks, ensuring a steady supply throughout the growing season. This same principle applies to beans, carrots, radishes, and other quick-growing crops. Take their famous Three Sisters method. Corn, beans, and squash aren't just planted together because it looks nice. The corn gives the beans something to climb. The beans add nitrogen to the soil that feeds the corn and squash. The squash leaves spread out and keep weeds from taking over. Together, these 3 crops produce 3 times more food per square foot than if you planted each one separately. That kind of efficiency doesn't happen by luck. This level of planning might seem overwhelming, but it's what separates gardens that barely feed a family for a few weeks from gardens that provide food for an entire year. The only product we'll ever promote on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a veteran prepper, about 126 superfoods and preservation methods from crisis times like the Great Depression and wartime that are impossible to find elsewhere. We decided to promote his book because we are the last generation able to share these techniques and superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be a shame to see this information about highly nutritious foods and preservation methods to survive crises disappear. You can also find a book about herbal remedies from Nicole Apelian on their store. If you're watching this on TV, you can look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and find the books by clicking the link in our channel description or any other video description. The groundwork for a successful harvest gets laid long before the first seed hits the soil, and it all starts with understanding what makes plants truly thrive. Good soil costs money. At least that's what the garden centers want you to believe. Walk down the fertilizer aisle and you'll find 50-pound bags of compost selling for $15 to $20 each. Premium potting soil runs even higher. For a decent-sized garden, you're looking at spending $400 or more just to get your dirt up to par. The Amish take a different approach entirely. They create their own soil amendments using materials that most people throw away or consider waste. Horse manure forms the foundation of their composting system, but it's not just about having horses around. Fresh manure would burn plants, but when it's composted properly with kitchen scraps, fallen leaves, and garden waste, it transforms into something gardeners call black gold. What makes this approach so effective isn't just the cost savings, though. That's certainly impressive. The Amish understand that soil health goes far beyond just adding nutrients. Their composting system creates an entire ecosystem of beneficial microorganisms that work together to feed plants naturally. Commercial fertilizers might provide quick nutrition, but they don't build the long-term soil structure that sustains healthy plants year after year. This isn't just folk wisdom either. University Extension Services have tested Amish compost and found it contains more nutrients than most commercial fertilizers. The organic matter improves soil structure, helping it hold water during dry spells and drain properly during wet periods. Plants grown in this enriched soil develop stronger root systems and show better resistance to diseases. The Amish have been recycling since before it was trendy. They just called it common sense instead of posting about it online. Turns out composting works better than commenting. The process takes patience. Compost piles need the right mix of carbon-rich materials like dry leaves and nitrogen-rich materials like kitchen scraps. They need to be turned regularly and kept at the right moisture level. Most importantly, they need time. A properly managed compost pile takes 6 months to a year to fully break down. The Amish have learned to read their compost like others read the weather. They know when a pile is too wet by the smell it produces. They can tell when the carbon to nitrogen ratio is off by how quickly it breaks down. They understand that a properly managed pile should heat up in the center, killing weed seeds and harmful bacteria while preserving the beneficial organisms that make plants thrive. While commercial gardeners are buying expensive soil tests that cost $50 to $100, Amish farmers test their soil pH with simple kits that cost $3 at the hardware store. They learned long ago that plants have specific needs, and meeting those needs doesn't require fancy equipment or expensive solutions. The difference shows in the results. Vegetables grown in properly composted soil taste better, store longer, and produce higher yields. When your soil is this rich, plants practically grow themselves. Root vegetables develop better flavor, leafy greens stay crisp longer after harvest, and tomatoes develop the deep, complex flavors that store-bought varieties can never match. That foundation makes everything else in the garden easier, but even the best soil won't help if you're starting with the wrong seeds. Here's where most gardeners make their biggest mistake. They buy seeds every single spring like clockwork, spending $20 to $40 on packets that contain more seeds than they'll ever plant. Meanwhile, the Amish are harvesting seeds from their own plants, cutting their costs to almost nothing after the first year. Seed saving isn't rocket science, but it does require knowing which plants to choose. Hybrid varieties won't produce seeds that grow true to type. You might plant seeds from a hybrid tomato and end up with something completely different. Heritage varieties, on the other hand, have been around for generations precisely because they reproduce reliably from their own seeds. The Amish learned long ago to select their seed plants carefully. They don't just save seeds from any plant, they choose the healthiest, most productive specimens in their garden. If a tomato plant produces earlier than others, resists disease better, or yields more fruit, those are the seeds worth saving. This natural selection process means their varieties actually improve over time, becoming better adapted to local growing conditions. The numbers tell the whole story. A single tomato plant can produce enough seeds for next year's entire tomato crop. One pepper contains seeds for dozens of plants. A healthy bean plant generates seeds for hundreds of future plants. When you save seeds from 85% of your garden like the Amish do, you're essentially getting next year's garden for free. The Amish treat their seed collection like a retirement account. Every year it grows, and every year it pays dividends. The only difference is you can eat the interest. Storage matters just as much as selection. Seeds need to stay cool and dry to remain viable. Many Amish families store their seeds in glass jars with tight-fitting lids, kept in cool basements or root cellars. Some add a packet of powdered milk or rice to absorb any excess moisture. Properly stored seeds can last 3 to 5 years, sometimes longer. The process becomes routine after the first year. Bean pods are left on the plant until they rattle when shaken. Tomato seeds are fermented in their own gel for a few days, then cleaned and dried. Pepper seeds are simply removed from ripe fruits and dried on screens. Each family develops their own system for tracking which varieties came from which plants and when they were collected. The first year requires that $50 investment. Half goes toward basic tools that will last for years. The other half buys heritage variety seeds that will keep producing year after year. After that initial investment, the only new seeds needed are for trying different varieties or replacing any that didn't store well. This approach transforms gardening from an annual expense into a one-time investment that keeps paying returns. When you control your own seed supply, you control your food costs for years to come. More importantly, you develop varieties that are perfectly suited to your specific growing conditions and your family's taste preferences. But knowing which plants to grow makes all the difference. The Amish don't just grow food, they grow food systems that work for decades. While most gardeners start from scratch every spring, Amish families have asparagus patches that have been producing for 20 years or more. Smart crop selection means choosing plants that keep delivering year after year instead of starting the whole process over every season. Asparagus spears push through the soil for 15 to 20 years from a single planting. Rhubarb stalks keep coming back for decades. These perennial vegetables require more planning up front, but they eliminate the annual cycle of buying, planting, and replanting. The beauty of perennial crops goes beyond just saving money on seeds. Once established, these plants develop deep root systems that make them incredibly drought-resistant. They're also among the first foods available each spring, providing fresh nutrition when most gardens are still bare soil. Asparagus can be harvested for 6 to 8 weeks every spring, while rhubarb produces multiple harvests throughout the growing season. Rhubarb deserves special attention because most people only know it from strawberry rhubarb pie. One rhubarb plant produces enough stalks for dozens of pies, jams, and sauces every year. The plant keeps expanding, and after a few years, you can divide it to create new plants. What started as one $20 plant becomes a rhubarb empire that feeds the whole neighborhood. Bush beans operate on a different principle, but deliver similar results. Most gardeners plant bush beans once and harvest everything at the same time. The Amish figured out that if you plant small amounts every 2 weeks through the growing season, You get fresh beans continuously instead of being overwhelmed with more beans than you can handle all at once. This succession planting strategy works for many crops beyond beans. Lettuce, radishes, carrots, and even corn can be planted in smaller amounts multiple times rather than all at once. The result is a steady supply of fresh food rather than feast or famine harvests that leave families scrambling to preserve everything before it spoils. The Amish treat their vegetables better than most people treat their retirement accounts. They plant once and collect dividends for 20 years. No wonder their gardens perform better than the stock market. Storage crops make up 60% of an Amish garden because they provide food when nothing else is growing. Potatoes store in cool, dark places for 6 to 8 months. Winter squash can last almost as long when kept in the right conditions. Onions, when properly cured, feed families through winter and into spring. This balance between fresh eating and storage separates successful food gardens from hobby gardens. Fresh lettuce and tomatoes taste great in summer, but they don't help when snow covers the ground. Storage crops might not seem as exciting, but they're what keep families fed year-round without depending on grocery stores, but only if you know how to keep plants happy without breaking the bank. Water bills have a funny way of doubling during summer months when gardens need the most attention. The Amish sidestep this problem entirely by collecting what falls from the sky for free. Rain barrels positioned under downspouts capture hundreds of gallons during every decent storm. What city dwellers pay $4 per 100 gallons for, Amish families get delivered directly to their property at no charge. 1 inch of rain on a 1,000-square-foot roof produces over 600 gallons of water. Most roofs are much larger, meaning a single summer thunderstorm can fill multiple rain barrels. The math works even better when you consider that plants actually prefer rainwater to treated city water. Rainwater lacks the chlorine and other chemicals that can stress sensitive plants. The Amish have perfected the art of water collection beyond simple rain barrels. They position containers strategically around their property to catch water from multiple roof lines. Some families connect several barrels together with simple gravity-fed systems that keep water flowing even when individual barrels fill up. A few mosquito dunks in each barrel prevent pest problems without harming plants. Mulching changes everything about water management. A thick layer of straw around plants reduces watering needs by 70% while keeping weeds from sprouting. The straw acts like a blanket, holding moisture in the soil instead of letting it evaporate in the hot sun. Weeds can't push through the mulch layer, eliminating hours of tedious hand weeding. The Amish water their gardens like they run their businesses, efficiently, effectively, and without wasting a drop. Their plants get plenty to drink while their wallets stay dry. Drip irrigation sounds expensive until you see how the Amish make it work. Recycled milk jugs with tiny holes poked in the bottom provide slow, steady water directly to plant roots. This system delivers water exactly where plants need it instead of spraying it everywhere like expensive sprinkler systems that cost $200 or more. For larger areas, they create simple soaker hoses from old garden hoses by poking small holes every few inches. These homemade systems work just as well as commercial drip irrigation, but cost a fraction of the price. The key is delivering water slowly so it soaks deep into the soil rather than running off the surface. Timing matters as much as method. Early morning watering gives plants time to absorb moisture before the heat of the day. Evening watering can promote fungal diseases when water sits on leaves overnight. The Amish learned that consistent deep watering twice a week beats daily light watering that only wets the surface. These water conservation methods don't just save money, they actually produce healthier plants. Deep, infrequent watering encourages roots to grow deeper, making plants more drought-resistant. Surface watering creates shallow root systems that need constant attention. Getting water management right sets the foundation for everything else, especially when it comes to keeping that harvest fresh for months. 300 quarts of preserved food line the shelves of a typical Amish family's pantry by the end of harvest season. That's not showing off, that's survival strategy. The Amish preserve everything they can during the abundant months to carry them through winter when fresh produce costs a fortune at the store or simply isn't available at all. Root cellars revolutionize food storage without requiring a single kilowatt of electricity. These underground rooms maintain steady temperatures between 32 and 40 degrees throughout winter. Potatoes, carrots, turnips, and cabbage store for 8 months or longer in these naturally climate-controlled spaces. The earth itself provides the refrigeration that modern families pay hundreds of dollars monthly to maintain. The construction of a root cellar doesn't require expensive materials or specialized skills. Many Amish families dig simple storage areas under their houses or into hillsides, lining them with stone or concrete blocks. Proper ventilation prevents moisture buildup that could cause spoilage, while the consistent temperature keeps vegetables in a state of suspended animation through the coldest months. Canning transforms the economics of gardening completely. $50 worth of green beans becomes $200 worth of canned goods when you do the work yourself. The same applies to tomatoes, corn, and dozens of other vegetables. The initial investment in canning jars and equipment pays for itself within the first season, then keeps saving money year after year. The Amish approach food preservation like squirrels preparing for winter, except their nuts don't go bad and they taste better in January. Water bath canning handles high-acid foods like tomatoes and pickles. Pressure canning takes care of low-acid vegetables like green beans and corn. Both methods require following tested recipes and proper procedures, but the techniques haven't changed in generations because they work reliably. The Amish have learned to time their preservation work with the garden's natural rhythms. They can green beans when the plants are producing heavily rather than trying to preserve a few jars at a time. Tomato canning happens during the peak of harvest when fruits are perfectly ripe and abundant. This batch processing approach makes the work more efficient and ensures consistent quality. Dehydration offers another preservation method that requires minimal equipment. Apples become dried fruit that lasts for months. Herbs dry naturally when hung in bundles in dry, well-ventilated areas. Even vegetables like corn and beans can be dried for winter use when other preservation methods aren't practical. The numbers tell the real story. $800 worth of stored food comes from that original $50 garden investment when preservation methods multiply the value of fresh produce. Families eating from their own preserved harvest through winter avoid the inflated prices of off-season vegetables while enjoying food that tastes better than anything from the grocery store. This level of food security requires understanding when to harvest for maximum storage life and how to handle crops properly from garden to pantry, but getting the timing right makes all the difference. Succession planting separates amateur gardeners from food producers who eat fresh vegetables all season long. The Amish plant lettuce every 2 weeks from early spring through late summer, ensuring crisp salads on the table continuously instead of dealing with 50 heads of lettuce all ripening at once. This staggered approach works for radishes, carrots, green beans, and dozens of other quick-growing crops. Most gardeners wait until all danger of frost has passed before planting anything. The Amish know that cool season crops like peas, spinach, and lettuce actually prefer cool weather and can handle light frosts. They're planting these hardy vegetables 4 to 6 weeks before the last expected frost date, while others are still studying seed catalogs indoors. This early planting strategy gives them a significant advantage in both timing and yield. Cool weather crops that are established before hot weather arrives produce better quality vegetables and often continue producing longer into the season. Plants that struggle to establish in hot weather rarely reach their full potential. Fall gardening often produces better vegetables than spring planting, but most people miss this opportunity entirely. Cool season crops planted in late summer mature during the perfect weather of autumn. Broccoli, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts develop their best flavor when they mature in cool temperatures. Hot summer weather makes these crops bitter and tough. The Amish plant by the calendar like clockwork. They know Mother Nature runs on schedule even when the weather doesn't seem to cooperate, unlike some people's punctuality at Sunday dinner. Temperature matters more than calendar dates for heat-loving crops like tomatoes and peppers. Soil temperature needs to reach 60 degrees consistently before these warm season plants will thrive. The Amish test soil temperature with simple thermometers rather than guessing based on air temperature. They've learned that rushing warm season crops into cold soil often sets them back weeks, even if they survive. A tomato plant that sits in cold soil without growing for 2 weeks will be outperformed by one planted later in properly warmed soil. Patience with timing often produces faster results than jumping the gun. Winter planting happens during summer when experienced gardeners order seeds for fall planting. Many vegetables actually improve in flavor after experiencing light frosts. Carrots become sweeter, kale gets more tender, and parsnips develop their characteristic flavor only after cold weather hits. Understanding these timing principles means having fresh food available during every season instead of feast or famine gardening that produces too much at once. Getting the schedule right ensures steady harvests, but even perfect timing won't help if pests destroy the crops before harvest time. Chemical pesticides cost $50 to $100 per gallon and create more problems than they solve. The Amish eliminated 80% of their pest problems by planting the right combinations of vegetables and flowers together. Companion planting works because certain plants naturally repel insects that would otherwise destroy crops. Marigolds deserve a place in every food garden, not because they look pretty, but because they smell terrible to many harmful insects. Aphids, whiteflies, and nematodes avoid areas where marigolds are growing. The strong scent that humans find pleasant acts like a natural bug spray that works all season long. The key to companion planting success lies in understanding which plants work well together and which ones interfere with each other. Basil planted near tomatoes not only repels certain insects, but also improves the flavor of the tomatoes. Garlic scattered throughout the garden deters many pests while providing a useful crop for the kitchen. Nasturtiums serve as living traps for cucumber beetles and squash bugs. These colorful flowers attract the pests away from valuable crops, concentrating them in one area where they're easier to manage. The flowers are also edible, adding peppery flavor to salads while doing pest control duty. Handpicking larger pests like potato beetles and tomato hornworms costs nothing but time. The Amish turned this chore into pocket money for children who earn 5 cents per bug collected. At those rates, a thorough beetle hunt pays better than expensive pesticides and eliminates the problem without chemicals. The Amish approach pest control like good neighbors. They invite the helpful bugs over for dinner and politely ask the troublemakers to leave. Most bugs are better at taking hints than some relatives. Crop rotation breaks pest cycles naturally. Colorado potato beetles that overwinter in soil expecting potatoes find beans or corn instead. Without their preferred food source, pest populations crash on their own. This 4-year rotation system requires planning but costs nothing to implement. The Amish have learned that timing plays a crucial role in pest management. Planting certain crops earlier or later than usual can help them avoid peak pest periods. Row covers during vulnerable growth stages protect young plants without chemicals, and removing them once plants are established allows beneficial insects access while crops are strong enough to handle minor pest pressure. Beneficial insects like ladybugs and lacewings control aphids and other soft-bodied pests when gardeners avoid broad-spectrum pesticides that kill everything. Creating habitat for these helpful predators means having fewer pest problems without spending money on controls, but success depends on making the most of whatever space you have available. Vegetables in just 20 square feet when done right. The Amish apply their space maximizing techniques to any size area, proving that good soil and smart plant choices matter more than having acres of land. Vertical growing transforms walls and fences into productive growing space. Pole beans climb 8 feet high while producing 3 times more food than bush varieties in the same ground space. Cucumbers, trained up trellises, take up 2 square feet of soil but spread their vines over 20 square feet of vertical area. This technique works just as well with peas, small melons, and even winter squash when the supports are strong enough. The Amish have perfected vertical growing systems using simple materials like wooden stakes, wire mesh, and even old ladders. They understand that strong support structures are essential because plants loaded with produce can become surprisingly heavy. A cucumber vine full of fruit can easily snap a flimsy trellis, destroying weeks of growth in minutes. Square-foot gardening fits 16 plants where most people plant 4. The secret lies in understanding how much space each plant actually needs. Lettuce plants require only 4 inches between them, not the 12 inches most seed packets recommend. Carrots can grow with just 2 inches between rows. Radishes mature so quickly they can be harvested before neighboring plants need the space. The Amish pack more vegetables into small spaces than most people pack into their vacation suitcases. The difference is their plants actually want to be there. Intensive planting requires richer soil because more plants are competing for the same nutrients. This makes the Amish composting methods even more valuable in small spaces. Every square foot needs to work overtime when space is limited. Container selection makes a huge difference in small space gardening. The Amish use everything from old buckets to wooden boxes, but they ensure containers are deep enough for root development. Tomatoes need at least 5-gallon containers, while lettuce can thrive in shallow boxes just 6 inches deep. Drainage becomes critical in container gardening. The Amish drill holes in the bottom of every container and add a layer of gravel or broken pottery to prevent waterlogged soil. Poor drainage kills more container plants than any other factor. They've learned that it's better to water more frequently than to risk soggy roots that lead to plant death. Window boxes and hanging baskets expand growing space even further. Cherry tomatoes cascade beautifully from hanging containers, while herbs thrive in sunny window boxes. The Amish position these containers to catch morning sun, which is gentler on plants than harsh afternoon heat. Succession planting becomes crucial in tiny gardens where every inch counts. As soon as lettuce is harvested, new seeds go into the same spot. Quick-growing crops like radishes fill empty spaces between slower developing plants like tomatoes. This keeps soil productive throughout the entire growing season without wasting valuable space on empty ground. The Amish haven't just mastered gardening, they've mastered self-reliance. With a $50 investment and the right approach, you can turn any patch of soil into a year-round supply and healthy homegrown food that saves money and brings peace of mind.